Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC 124. Recapping my last show, I went 9-0, 2-0 in the Ultimate Fighter semifinals, 4-0 in the Ultimate Fighter finale, and 3-0 on my picks for Strikeforce St. Louis. My overall record now sits at 41 wins and 17 losses. Unfortunately, because of a business decision, Sports Interaction did not allow me, or anyone else for that matter, to parlay these fights together on one card, so I didn't end up betting on any of them. That won't be the case for UFC 124, and as always, my videos are affiliated with sportsinteraction.com. Please click on the link in the description to get your free sign-up bonus of up to $125. Now, I'd like to take a quick second to say thank you to the various MMA sites that allow me to post my videos, as I am very grateful for the extra exposure. I always mention lowkick.com, but I would also like to give a shout out to MMAnews.com, Bloody Elbow, MMA Core, MMA Mania, and Sheerdog, just to name a few. All of these sites are great places to get MMA updates, and I highly recommend checking them out. Now, UFC 124 will take place on December 11th, 2010 at the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, which also happens to be my home country. I'll be giving my predictions for all 5 main card fights, so let's get to it. To kick things off, we will open up in the welterweight division between 22-6 Thiago Alves and 14-5 John Howard. Entering the fight, Howard is coming off a defeat which ended a 7-fight win streak, including 4 wins in the UFC. Thiago Alves has dropped 2 in a row following his own 7-fight win streak. Alves is the favorite, paying $1.30, while Howard the dog is at $3.20. Starting with John Howard, he has 6 knockout victories, including his last 2 UFC wins. He's a patient fighter on the feet that will wait for his openings. He's a BJJ purple belt with 6 submission wins, and when he gets taken down, he scrambles well to get back to his feet. On the negative side, his patient approach can result in him being too inactive and falling behind in scorecards. But the biggest issue could be his takedown defense. In a lot of his fights, he has been taken down with relative ease, especially when he opens up and starts winging punches. Overall, he seems like he does a lot of things well, but nothing overly spectacular. To say the least, this is a very big fight for Thiago Alves. He has lost 2 consecutive fights, and he is haunted by his inability to make weight. Nonetheless, Alves is a beast. He does cut a lot of weight, which means that he's a very big 170 at bell time. He has some of the nastiest leg kicks in the game, and overall he's a solid Muay Thai striker, with 11 career knockouts. Even though he got controlled by Fitch and GSP, he showed that he could defend the takedown and get off the ground, and against Matt Hughes and Josh Koscheck, he did a very good job defending against the shot. Against St-Pierre, he fought a full 5 rounds and didn't slow down that much, so as long as he doesn't dehydrate too severely prior to the fight, endurance should not be an issue. Along with his struggles against the elite of the elite level wrestlers, which have resulted in 3 defeats, he has also been submitted on 3 occasions, but the last was 5 years and 13 fights ago. Now, I don't think that Howard has the skills to routinely put Alves on his back, as the Brazilian should be able to defend well if Howard elects to go for a takedown. Howard's tendency to be patient could really hurt him in this fight. I think that if Doomsday stands in front of the pit bull, Alves will chop him down with leg kicks. Alves can take a lot of punishment, and even though Howard has stopped opponents in the past, I can't see it happening here with Thiago's chin. If Alves is able to avoid the submission, I think that Thiago's striking will be just too much for Howard. So my prediction is Thiago Alves defeat John Howard by late stoppage. Jumping down to the lightweight division, Joe Stevenson, sporting a 36-11 record, will square off with 28-1 Mac Danzig. Joe Daddy has gone 3-4 over his last 7 fights, but has fought the who's who of the UFC lightweights. While Danzig has lost 4 of his last 5 fights, Danzig will be the underdog at $3.20, while Joe Daddy will pay $1.30. A word that is used persistently to describe Joe's style is crushing. When Stevenson gets a hold of an opponent, he has a vice-like grip, and the best example of this are his very dangerous chokeholds. He has a very strong upper body, so when the fight goes to the mat, there are few that can match him, making him very hard to submit. On the feet, he does have power, but he uses very few kicks, which makes him a little too one-dimensional. He is light on his feet, he does a good job moving to avoid being a stationary target, and he will charge forward with strikes looking to set up a takedown. He has gone the distance 16 times, winning 10, which says to me he has good endurance. Mac Danzig is a solid technical striker. Even in defeat, Danzig has looked very crisp, with good combinations and some solid leg kicks. Mac also has 10 career submission wins. He will use good positioning to set up passes, he will drop some heavy elbows, and constantly work for submissions, especially from the bottom. In a number of Danzig's fights, he has attempted a Kimura. Unfortunately, Mac has never won a fight by Kimura, and in a lot of instances, by attempting to go for it, he winds up in the worst position, sometimes getting his back taken. The most notable issue Mac has had in his recent struggles is dealing with an opponent's pressure. Danzig should have the advantage on the feet, early on, but I don't see him being able to knock out Joe, as he's only been stopped once, and that was over 11 years ago. On the mat, Danzig has good submission skills, but I think Stevenson's strength advantage will show up huge here, which should result in him controlling the fight there. Stevenson is a BJJ black belt, and I really see him using his grappling skills to emulate the game plan that other fighters have had success with versus Danzig. I don't want to get too specific in how this fight might play out, but I could see Joe beating Mac up on the mat, Danzig rolling for a Kimura attempt, Joe defending well, taking his back, and locking in the rear naked choke for the victory, which he has done 8 times in his career. So my prediction is Joe Stevenson to defeat Mac Danzig by late submission, which I think will result in Danzig making the drop to featherweight to avoid being cut altogether. Continuing in the lightweight division, potentially the fight of the night, 18-2 Jim Miller will square off with 14-0 Charles Oliveira. Miller has won 5 fights in a row and his only 2 career defeats coming at the top 2 lightweights in the UFC. Charles Oliveira is undefeated, and he has finished 13 of his 14 opponents. Oliveira is the favorite, paying $1.67, while Miller pays $2.07. Despite only being a BJJ brown belt, Oliveira is a wizard of the submission game, and he also has an impressive striking repertoire. The first, back to the mat. He has 7 submission wins, including a pair to kickstart his UFC career. He can work from both bottom and top, has no issue with pulling guard, and because of his skills, fighters are very tempted to take him down. On the feet, the Brazilian has very rapid strikes, both kicks and punches, and he has scored 6 career knockouts. He will quickly snap off a combo, then drop down for a takedown, and DeBronx has no hesitation throwing kicks, again because of his ground skills, and he will launch a flying knee when he sees the opportunity. He has shown good cardio to date. The question still remains, how will he respond to a high-level wrestler who isn't afraid to take him down and grind on him? Now, Jim Miller might just be that elite-level wrestler that can help answer that question. He was NCAA Division I, he's a BJJ black belt, he has 10 career submissions, and he does a good job working to improve his position on the mat, and will use heavy elbows and punches to break down a fighter from the top. Miller's stand-up is pretty good too. He doesn't have a lot of knockouts, but he has shown pop in his punches. Now, it's hard to find a lot of holes in Miller's game because he's never been finished, but against Mark Koscheck, Miller struggled with the Canadian's grappling skills and found himself in some pretty rough positions, including being mounted and locked in a body triangle with his arm pinned for a prolonged period of time. Also, against Mac Danzig, he got stuck in a very deep guillotine, but was saved by the bell. For all the negative from these 2 situations, the fact that he survived both could be far more important. Now, I expect that Miller will look for a takedown and see what DeBronx has to offer on the mat, but at the same time, Oliveira will probably invite this. On the feet, I think that the Brazilian's speed and variety could give Miller some issues. Oliveira has some nasty leg kicks that really wore on Efrain Escudero. He should be able to throw them at will, and this could really take away some of Miller's ability to engage. Also, Gleison Tebow was able to time Miller's kicks, catch them, and then attack, and when DeBronx caught a kick of Escudero's, he put him on the mat. I don't know if Miller can be finished, but I think Oliveira will put him in some bad positions, so I'll be taking Charles Oliveira to defeat Jim Miller in this fight. Moving next to the heavyweight division, undefeated 10-0 Sean McCorkle will square off with 23-4 Stefan Struve. Struve is the favorite, paying $1.60 and has won 4 of his last 5 fights, while McCorkle pays $2.20 and is coming off a very quick submission victory in his UFC debut. Starting first with Struve, he's a kickboxer, but he has won the majority of his fights by submission. The skyscraper is just that. At 6'11", Struve is a giant and will use his long limbs to try and keep his opponent to the distance. When he takes an opponent to the ground, he uses those lengthy appendages to attempt all kinds of submissions. He is constantly looking for triangles, will attempt leg locks, and is very difficult to shake off when he gets his hooks in. On the feet, he certainly has knockout power. He likes to mix in some knees and kicks to work over an opponent, and another thing that Struve has going for him is his heart. We've been able to see this on multiple occasions because the opponents have connected and really hurt the Dutch striker. He has been stopped by both Roy Nelson and Junior Dos Santos and has taken some significant beatings in other fights, including getting pounded on by fighters who are able to take him down. Struve's endurance is also a question mark, as he can be slowed by being beaten up, as well as by attempting submissions and gassing out his legs or arms. His opponent, Sean McCorkle, has spent his career fighting in smaller promotions. In his career, he has finished every opponent but one by either submission or strikes, including Mark Hunt, who he tapped with relative ease at UFC 119. Now, McCorkle is also a very tall fighter, standing 6'7", and will outweigh Struve by close to 30 pounds. In previous fights, Sean fought at super heavyweight and had to cut down from 320 for the UFC, which he admitted was the first time he had gone that low since high school. His first fight was quick, so endurance was not an issue, but if this fight goes longer, this could become a huge problem. McCorkle has some pretty good takedowns and ground and pound, which he has tapped his opponents with in past fights. He does a good job using his size to hold opponents on the ground and wear them down. Looking at how this fight might play out, I have to look at two things: Struve's susceptibility to being taken down and pounded on, and McCorkle's success with taking fighters down and pounding them out. McCorkle's chin is not being tested a great deal, so it'll be interesting to see what happens if Struve connects. I think that the Skyscraper has been playing with fire of late, especially in his last fight, by getting pounded on before a miraculous comeback. I think that his luck runs out in this one. My prediction is the underdog, Sean McCorkle, to defeat Stefan Struve by ground and pound stoppage. At UFC 74, Josh Koscheck and a recently dethroned George St-Pierre battled it out for 3 rounds, with GSP taking a unanimous decision victory. In that fight, GSP took Koss down at will and was able to pass his guard on several occasions. Koscheck did an admirable job defending off his back and was even able to put George on the mat in that fight. On the feet, GSP was very technical with his strikes, while Koscheck winged big shots that Rush for the most part was able to avoid. Fast forward over 3 years and these two will meet for the welterweight title. Since their last fight, George has won 6 fights, sitting now with a record of 20-2, while Josh has gone 6-2 and is currently riding a 3-fight win streak with an overall record of 17-4. The champion will be the betting favorite at $1.18, while the challenger will pay $4.30. Looking first at Koscheck, he has an impressive wrestling base, but has vastly improved his striking since making his debut. He favors his overhand right and will throw it with bad intentions. He stopped Frank Trigg with a barrage of punches, and he highlight-reeled Yoshiyuki Yoshida with a big shot. Against Anthony Johnson, he used a combination of strikes that eventually led to a takedown and submission. And versus Paul Daly, he used very limited stand-up before putting him on the mat. Koss is versatile, which is a must in the fight game. But Josh did get caught with a shocking knockout by Thiago, and he struggled against Thiago Alves in the striking game. Against Johnson, Koscheck had a few issues with Johnson's reach and striking power, along with his strength on the mat early on in that fight. Now for the champion, GSP's takedown and takedown defense are probably the best in the game. He works diligently on the mat, trying to improve his position and set up either elbows and punches or a submission. On the feet, he has a very fast jab, nice punch-kick combinations, and likes to use the Superman punch. He is also very effective at jumping into strikes and darting out to avoid being hit. Neither Dan Hardy nor Thiago Alves were able to do much damage on the feet, which was a combination of St-Pierre's skills and the threat of the takedown. Now GSP was able to take Koscheck down, but he also put John Fitch down with the consistency, and that is no easy feat. Another technique that George will use is a front headlock to control and wear on an opponent. He usually will accompany this with some knees to the body. Now, like Koss, George has suffered a shocking knockout, which some have claimed made him gun-shy in exchanges. And despite attempting a lot of submissions, he has only secured 2 in the UFC. Against Hardy, he attempted quite a few, but couldn't close the deal, and there have been times that a failed submission has resulted in a bad position for George. The biggest question for this fight is how much has Koscheck improved since their last meeting? I think the answer is a lot. And his striking is getting better, and overall he seems like a much smarter fighter. But I think the GSP has come a long way as well since they last met. George had a market size advantage in their last fight, and to me he seems like he has put on even more muscle since then. Koss did have some issues with Anthony Johnson's size and did a lot of swinging and missing in that fight because of Johnson's reach, keeping him to the outside, which George should be able to do as well. Koss will need to use his wrestling to keep the fight standing, which is something odd to say, as a decorated collegiate wrestler will need to avoid letting the fight go to the mat. Against Daly, Josh took him down, but didn't do a ton of damage, and Daly was able to get up. And if Daly can get up, so can GSP. Now Koscheck will need to catch George with that big right and hope he wills. The question is, will he be able to get in close enough? George took next to no damage from Thiago Alves on the feet, while Alves had great success striking with Koscheck. GSP will need to be wary of going for submissions in this fight, as a miss could result in Koss getting on top, which is not a good thing. In the end, I think that George and Greg Jackson will build a game plan that is just too much for Koscheck. George will neutralize the American and beat him up both on the feet and the mat. I think that Josh will put up as good a fight as anyone has, but my prediction is GSP to defeat Josh Koscheck and retain his title by unanimous decision. So those are my picks for UFC 124. You can see the sportsinteraction.com bet card at the top of the screen for the odds and payout. If you'd like to make a bet for UFC 124, click on the link in the description to get your free deposit bonus. I'm planning on doing a prediction show for the final WEC event, so please check back here in a few days for that. And thank you for watching Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for UFC 124.